Distinguished lecture series. I remember 11 years ago, not in this room, a slightly smaller room, when June Callwood delivered the first Dalton Camp lecture. Any of you who have been here for these subsequent lectures are probably bored by the fact that I will always remember that night because I was sure the fire marshal was going to close it down. The stage was cluttered with students who were literally hanging off every word that a great Canadian journalist was throwing before them. Not like pearls before swine, but like someone summing up an awesome career. And indeed it was a summation. It wasn't long after that June Callwood died. And the Dalton Camp lecture was widely quoted, widely clipped in all the media. She said here something that did plainly have resonance. I also want to say that it's a great honor for me to be here because I was, on a few very precious occasions, lucky enough to be the host of a program called Morningside, a fill-in host for Peter Zosky. And it was on those occasions, on some of them anyway, I had the pleasure on a Friday morning of actually pressing the microphone button and starting something which was called the political panel, the Friday political panel. And not only did most of this country close down for that hour, but I'm well aware that most of Ottawa, in fact all of Ottawa, had to listen in to hear Stephen Lewis and Eric Kieran's and Dalton Camp discuss the important issues of the day. It was the best political journalism, I would say, that this country has ever seen, and Dalton Camp was a huge part of it. So it's a great honor to be part of this ongoing tradition. And I think tonight we'll actually take it another step further, and I'm really quite excited about the possibilities. Before I actually perform something of a formal introduction, let me do the business part of this conversation, and that is, this is being recorded for broadcast, so please turn off anything that makes any noise or goes bump in the night that happens to be in your pocket. It won't appear on the radio. We'd like it not to appear on the radio. Having said that, I would also like to say, don't turn yourselves off. This is a live lecture. It should sound like a live lecture. And so if David Carr says something that offends you, please let him know. If he says something that excites you, please let him know that too. This is meant to be, it is a tradition of bringing people together and starting a conversation here in Fredericton at St. Mary's, but then we get the glorious opportunity of expanding it to a national audience on CBC Radio Ideas. And I'll probably remind you again at the end of the evening, but I can tell you right now, if you tune into Ideas on Tuesday the 26th of November, you'll be able to hear David Carr's lecture. Tonight's lecture is a bit of a turning point for the series. I've been here for 11 years, and I've introduced previously only Canadian journalists, some of the greatest people in our profession. We've decided to go outside our borders this year, and we've chosen David Carr as the lecturer. I think a very, very interesting choice. He is, of course, an American, and in doing a little bit of web research on him, I found out that he was born in the great middle American state of Minnesota. He actually attended journalism school in Minnesota as well. Minnesota is also the home of another great American journalist. I put that word in quotation marks, but Bob Dylan comes from Minnesota. Bob Dylan wrote songs like The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll and like Hurricane, about Hurricane Carter, that I think were great journalism. And I think, and I'm really not, I hope, going too far out on a limb here, that you'll be able to see how David Carr fits into that Dylan-esque tradition of journalism after his lecture this evening. He lives now in New Jersey. New Jersey is the place where another great American journalist died. That was Walt Whitman. Whitman actually was a journalist as well as being a poet. And I think you'll find in some of the things that David Carr might say today, the sorts of ideas that Whitman incorporated into the body of his amazing work. He was singing a song of himself, but it was a song that was very much America. And if you put Dylan and Whitman together, you might have a glimpse of a book that David Carr wrote about his own experiences, and that is The Night of the Gun. It can take you to a place much like those sort of Dylan-esque dystopias, but also a place where you'll learn a lot about yourself. Mr. Carr has spent the last 10 years working for the New York Times, and we all know about the New York Times. It is the paper of record, I would argue, not only for the United States, which it usually claims to be, but for the universe at large. 122 Pulitzer Prizes have been won by journalists who work for the New York Times. And I think that, I'm not, again, not going too far out on a limb if I suggest that if Mr. Carr continues with the kind of journalism he does, writing about the kinds of topics he writes about, and indeed tonight's lecture will be on one of those areas he's much interested in, media, we might soon hear at some day David Carr's name mentioned as Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 2013 Dalton Camp Lecturer, Mr. David Carr.
Wow, Paul, thank you for all those kind words. I heard two things especially. One, that the person who first gave this lecture died soon afterwards. Nice. Wasn't mentioned when I was invited. And that you guys should let me know if you don't like what I say. And I'm thinking, well, did they hand out fruit on the way in? It's a deep pleasure to be here. Mr. Vice President, thank you so much for your kind words. I wanted to thank Mary, Paul, and Carrie for being here from the CBC, and most especially Philip, who's been my host today and held my hand during all the hard parts. I'm assuming that you ended up with the Yankee up here because you've run out of Canadians. The thing is that I'm going to claim a little kind of honorary Canadian status because Minnesota, as you may know, right up on Canada. We wear Canada as kind of a great big hat, right? More importantly, I speak hockey.
I'm here to David. Sorry about that. Just sorry about this guy because it's for the radio. Is it his hand? You're hitting the podium, David. A little bit.
As a speaker might. Oh, it's radio. Let's just have a kooky time. Do it. It's supposed to be a live event, but oh, don't touch the podium. Are we okay now, Mary? But the most important thing of all, I speak hockey. I worked for the Minnesota North Stars and had the great privilege of working for the 1991 Minnesota North Stars, coached by the one and only Bob Gainey, one of the greatest people on earth. Bob was a lovely man, a gentle man, a kind man. He did work for Bobby Clark, and so did I. So, Mr. Clark, as some of you may know, is a rather serious man, and whenever he was, I did the game program, so I didn't have a lot of reason to interact with him. But if he was angry with you and called you into his office, you could tell he was mad because he wouldn't put his teeth in.
It's not the podium. Poor Carrie's going to have a heart attack.
What am I doing?
Maybe anything. The mic's doing it to you. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Should we switch mics? Or?
Yes, we're going to switch mics right now.
Feeling nothing more than... Yes, is this okay? Am I hitting anything? Am I screaming anything?
Just 1 sec.
What? I can't move. This is David Carr with the CBC. It seems like my radio career is going to be a little short. Are we okay now? Am I doing good?
Just go check.
I really feel like I'm building some momentum here. Room's with me.
That's too funny. I got this all on tape.
Is there some kind of stand you can put it on? I really can't have one more person walk up here. What do you want me to do? Okay, maybe you want to get a mic stand up here and I'll wear handcuffs. I'm used to it. We're sure the lapel mic won't work. Okay. Where was I? In Minnesota. I'm a Minnesotan. I worked in hockey. That means we're brothers. The other thing is, Minnesotans, like Canadians, not only humble, but very proud of their humility. Right? Proud of it. I feel like they're, you know, if you meet somebody old, you know, we kind of talk the same and we talk nice and they, how humble and nice are Canadians when that Rob Ford video came out? the one where he said it did not exist. And it finally came out that yes, indeed, he was smoking that crack, having a little bit of crack. His approval ratings in Toronto went up, what, 4 or 5 points? You guys are so nice. It's unbelievable. The thing I like about Mr. Ford is most of the time when you think of crackheads, you think of really emaciated, thin people. And I like a guy who can focus both on the crack and his groceries. Kind of a high achiever, right? He just likes sticking things in his mouth. You get the whiskey in there, the crack pipe, the donut, everything will go in. There are only so many hours in a day, but he managed to do his job, sort of. Get high, seems like fairly frequently, and tell all manner of lies. You just gotta hand it to the guy. That somebody could be big and bold and fat and on the crack like that guy. Oh wait, that's me. See how fat I am? I weigh about, I don't know, about 280 in there. I was in, I had spent a fair amount of time sort of poly-addicted, and that's me at my little graduation. So when I see Mr. Ford struggling, I see myself. 5-time treatment loser, person who lied just for practice, a person who thought everybody else was the problem. And so I don't really judge the guy. I wish he would quit with the lying. I think that's, at a certain point, it's like game over, dude. It's done. Give it up. And then today the Toronto, who had it? The Star had that video of him just going crazy. The thing that was disturbing about the video is the whole first half was shot from the waist down. Have you guys seen it? It'll cause eye damage if you watch it. It's, look, you know, you spend a few minutes watching Mr. Ford's basket move around. You're not going to be able to unsee that anytime soon. So when I see this guy, I think of myself. I was flat on my back, and you know, one thing led to another. I sobered up. I got custody of my kids. I I got jobs, I got other jobs, I did what I was supposed to do, I quit telling lies, and I ended up in the back of a bombardier plane on my way out here. I rode in the middle seat. You know, on the way back, you totally want to stay out of that seat. Do you know what I mean? On the little prop plane back there? That thing is a nightmare. I was next to one of your fellow citizens who was both reading a book on donuts and had a few donuts as well. I tell all this not just as a cheap joke, although it's gone over pretty well. But because I think the not so honorable mayor brings to mind sort of the media age that we're living in. He offers a kind of tutorial in modern media.